welcome Erin Quigley to the show. Hey, Erin, how's it going?
Hey, good. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah. Erin's
the big standing, no?
Yeah, exactly. We're three of us are all Zoom and remote, and we're all in SoCal at the same time. We're so
safely
close.
in SoCal. Safely in SoCal.
Exactly.
Which means we'll actually have to meet in person at some point.
Yes. When that returns.
Yeah, right.
When we're allowed out of
when
the
the
house.
Zombie apocalypse passes.
Oh, man. Yes. Let's not get into that. Let's talk about you, Erin. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and for anyone that doesn't know how famous you are already.
Oh, my God. Maybe.
Underwater photography.
Internet famous.
Yeah, we've talked about you on prior podcasts, but for maybe our new listeners, maybe tell us who you are and what you do, and we'll get into it from there.
Sure. I am an underwater photographer primarily. I've had a lot of different iterations. I think it's my last life. I'm just trying to smash everything in that I can do. But I am an underwater photographer. I have been teaching post-production for underwater shooters for about the past 10 years or so. And traveling, leading classes, teaching Lightroom and Photoshop boot camps. And because of COVID, one of the silver linings was all of a sudden I was at home with a lot of time on my hands and really wanted to do something online for people that was free, that everybody could join in from all over, the world. So we started doing, my collaborators, Jan and Joel Penner of New Media Soup and I started doing Go Ask Erin webinars online about Lightroom and Photoshop. So all post-production. And we started out by doing 3 a week because we thought we'd been doing it for about a month. And then as the months went by and we realized that we were going to be doing it for quite a while, we've been doing 2 a week since then. But right now, I think we're up to something like 80
Wow.
live
That's
broadcasts. Awesome. And also initially we started thinking they would be an hour, but because as you're about to find out, I'm a chatterbug. They had wind up being, 90 minutes to 2 hours, but we have a little cocktail party before they go on in the Zoom chat room. Nice. We've got a couple little drinking games we play. Oh yeah, it's not your typical tech webinar,
awesome.
Shall I say.
Sounds like some of our podcasts. Some of our podcasts, we usually slate between 30 minutes and an hour, and they usually go hour plus.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's too much fun. So since you already mentioned, where do if people want to check that out, where do they go to find out one of these?
GoAskErin.com.
Right.
And if we also have a Facebook page. So just look up Go Ask Erin on Facebook, and it'll take you to the Facebook page, and then we post all upcoming events there.
Very
now,
cool.
Can they ask questions to you on your Facebook page?
Oh, yes.
Awesome.
Yes, they can. But the way that it works is, again, what an evolution that process has been. I'm sure you guys have a similar one for your podcast, but, we started out with a kind of a weird notion of how it would work, of course, completely abandoning the notion of any practicality.
Yeah.
So, the idea that you'd have many hundreds of people able to just ask you questions in chat was a little bit impractical. So we
overwhelming for sure.
Yeah, overwhelming. So our sessions, we can't see any of the participants. We can't hear any of the participants, but everybody can write in on the chat a question. And if it can't be answered by the moderators, by Jen and Joel Penner, or if it's something that I think is particularly apt, then usually at the end of the session, there may be time for questions. Otherwise, if you send questions to admin at Go Ask Erin, we try to answer them in the email if it's not too elaborate.
Right. Nice.
Very cool.
Nice. We've been talking about some of ours where we will let people ask questions on Facebook or email them into us, and then we'll answer them during our podcast.
Yeah, no, we do that too. We have 2 different kinds of live events, actually. Yeah. One you'd think of as kind of a more traditional webinar, for lack of a better word, where I present a topic and everybody knows what the topic is going to be. And then the other one we have is something that we've been calling an image clinic, where people send me their images, or send questions in advance. And that way I can organize the photos that I would need to demonstrate the questions, or I try to answer the questions using other people's images as we're editing. And then recently we kind of evolved that into something called Techniques of the Week. So it's a shorter version, usually about half an hour, 40 minutes, where it might be one technique, it might be two, it might be stills, it might be video. Joel Penner is a video expert. So we're mixing it up a little bit as time goes by.
That's really cool. That's really neat.
Sounds like a great way to embrace COVID and what it's been giving us.
People all of a sudden had time to edit their shitty pictures.
Exactly right.
It's
me included.
Oh, absolutely. We're right there with you. It's that was kind of like our podcast. Todd and I had talked about it for at least a year, but we never had time. And then all of a sudden we have an abundance of time, and we're like,
no more excuses. No more.
Yeah, this has been a pipe dream of mine for a long time. So I'm really lucky to have hooked up with some great partners. Who
that's awesome, and congratulations on getting it started. That's fantastic.
So these webinars started then, but how long has Go Ask Erin been around?
Go Ask Erin has been around since 2008 or 9, I think. It's a long time.
Yeah. So to the new listeners, even though this new wrinkle and Go Ask Erin is there, the Go Ask Erin website has a ton of fantastic information, classes, as she mentioned, workshops and things like that, and we'll get into it. But I want to kind of take a step back, Erin, and kind of learn more about you and how you got into underwater photography, because if you go to her about page and learn about her, like Erin's background is fascinating. And I told her when we chatted earlier, like we could have several conversations that have nothing to do with underwater photography just based on her background. So I have to at least mention the first thing that popped out is you started out in Broadway, actually. I'm sure you did things others, but tell everyone about how you started off in doing costume design work in Broadway and then in LA, and give us a little bit about that history, because I think it's fascinating.
Yes. Well, I started out in the theater, actually, as a costume designer. I was the resident costume designer for Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago for many years. And I was lucky enough to, do other shows. Now, if you're not hip to Steppenwolf Theater, the ensemble contains people like Gary Sinise, John Malkovich, Joan Allen, Gary Cole, Laurie Metcalf. It's Billy Peterson. It's kind of a long list of luminaries. And so I started out designing costumes for them, and a couple of their shows went to New York, went to Broadway, and I went with them. So I have 2 Tony nominations actually for my work on Broadway.
That's awesome.
And then
what were the shows?
Song of Jacob Zulu and Grapes of Wrath.
Very cool.
Grapes of Wrath. So, and then Gary Sinise, who is an ensemble member, did a movie in Iowa. I think it was with Richard Gere and Kevin Anderson, and it came to be known as, oh my God, I can't remember. It started out being called The Farm of the Year. I'll think of it later, but it's about 2 brothers who's have inherited their family farm, but the bank forecloses on it, and instead of letting the bank get it, they burn it to the ground. Anyway, long story short,
one does. Yeah.
As one does. So I started doing movies from there and got a little bit of training, camera training outside of live theater. And then I was in Vermont doing summer stock. I think it was a production of A Little Night Music, which is this giant Sondheim musical. And I got a call from Laurie Metcalf saying, "You want a job because Roseanne just fired everybody on the pilot, and get out here." So I was like, okay, I'll be there. So I had no money. I owed all kinds of student loan debt. I was like, damn it, I'm just going to get out there. I got out there and got the job on the Roseanne show, and I did that for 10 years. So I did it for the entire series, basically, besides a little bit at the beginning before everybody got fired, before the first bloodbath. And but I was there for many bloodbaths. And we used to joke that we saw 300 writers coming. It was literally 300 writers over those 10 years that came and went. So we never actually learned their names because they were kind of like farm animals. You would be slaughtered for dinner. You kind of didn't want to get too involved. So anyway, so I have a background in theater and television and movies. And then what happened was can I cuss?
Yes, please.
Sure.
It's fucking stressful. And you just eventually fucking hate everybody.
Yeah.
So I needed to, after the Roseanne show ended, Laurie Metcalf and I got picked up by 20th Century Fox for a contract to do our own little production company where we would develop content loosely, targeted for Laurie to star in, but also just content that interested us in television. And so we did that for, I want to say 6 years with 20th Century Fox, and then another, 4 or 5 years with Warner Brothers Television. So I was basically a producer, I guess producer is the best way to describe it, although that's such a generic term, I kind of hesitate to use it. But I basically worked with writers to develop content. And then after that, I really did hate everybody. And so I decided that I would take a year off. Right. And during that period of time, I had been diving whenever I could. I started diving back in the Roseanne days because I needed to go somewhere where no one could talk to me.
You.
And I needed them to know I could not be reached. Yep. Because you're when you work on a show like that, and multi-camera television is very, very stressful for the technical people. Yeah. Because you never know what's going to hit you, and you have to have it immediately. Yeah. So I had like 3 pagers at the time, and I'd be driving through the canyon out here, and one of them would go off, and I'd like have to frantically find a phone booth because nobody had cell phones, and it was making me sick. I mean, I was just totally stressed out. So I had always lived near the water, loved being near the water. I grew up sailing, and I was a junior lifeguard and all that shit. And so I thought I just need to go underwater, and I did, and I started doing it more and more and more, and all the hiatuses I would go, and it just happened to be at a time on the planet when analog was changing to digital. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of a computer nerd to begin with, and had Photoshop chops from design. I used it to work with my own designs. Cool. And so I'd be on a liveaboard, and people who had been used to waiting for the light table to come out to look at their slides were now staring horrified into the screens of their 17-inch MacBooks, not understanding what resolution meant or the first thing about how they could even look at their pictures, in the same evaluative way that they had with an actual slide. So I found myself, being called on to help people. And I love help people. I love teachers. I come from a long line of teachers. And the company that I traveled with mostly then, I still do now, Backscatter, I traveled with them because they were, a few reasons. One, they always had extra shit if mine broke. So I knew that I would have that. But secondly, because they were so generous with their know-how. And I had traveled with pros before who it was clear you were just traveling with them to pay for their trip. Yeah. And it just pissed me off. It was like, really? Why am I paying extra to be on this trip when you're such a dick? So, and not even, and no education, no nothing, no help, nothing except attitude and criticism. And Backscatter was so great, just always so generous. And that was kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell people everything I could to make their pictures look better. Right. So at one point, Berkeley was just like, hey, can you do this? Like, more than just casually. And so it kind of evolved into that. And the whole Go Ask Erin thing came about because at one of our digital shootouts, which we have done annually for a long time, they set me up in a little closet, really literally the janitor's closet at the resort that they had cleaned out to make room for me. And there was like a long line that went outside, into the common area of people with shitty pictures, wanting me to help so they could enter them in the contest. And whatever questions came up to the other very excellent shooters and very professional people to shoot out. They didn't want to answer it or didn't know the answer, but mostly didn't want to answer it. They just say, go ask Erin. So someone posted a handwritten sign above the janitor's closet that said, go ask Erin.
That's awesome.
And kind of caught on. And I thought, oh, maybe I can just
got a ring to it.
That's catchy. Ring to it.
That's awesing.
That's catchy. I think
Go Ask Erin was born.
Yeah, that's it.
Nice.
And which liveaboard? Do you remember which outing that was at when that happened?
Well, that was at a digital shootout in Little Cayman.
Cayman.
But the one image I have in mind that's like the genesis to me, or the real kind of missing link in the evolution between analog and digital, was on a trip to, I think it was Komodo, on the old Kararu cruises, on like the Sea Safari or something like that. I just remember there was this long table in the galley, and everybody had these laptops. And I just remember the light from the laptops instead of the light from the light tables. And I just looked at it and I thought, okay, it's changed. There wasn't a single person without a laptop. There wasn't a single person who was getting, their E6 done. It was like, I knew it was gone forever.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris Newbert.
The world has changed and moved on.
So where did you learn how to dive? Here in LA, or?
I learned how to dive here in LA. I did my first 100 dives in Southern California.
Okay.
Almost all a lot of beach diving. I did those first 100 dives pretty much before I had a camera in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
And so, roundabout dive 87, as I'm just drawing tic-tac-toe in the sand, every time I get swept this way and then swept that way, and that's all I can see, I thought, I gotta get it. There's something else has got to start going on here. So I asked a friend of mine which camera they would buy if they were starting out, and they gave me a good recommendation, the Nakonis RS, which I had very happily for many years. I still have it. It's paperweight now, but it's a lovely paperweight with good memories. So that's how it started. And then that was really the needle in my vein, because that just became something that I couldn't get bored with. It was so dynamic. It was constantly changing. If it wasn't the gear itself that was changing, my kind of goals changed, and the environments were always changing, and the social circumstances of traveling and diving were always changing. So I just became enamored of it. Also, I feel like even back then, I mean, now more than then, but I feel like the marine environment is so fragile and in need of stewardship and protection. And a lot of people don't dive, right? So the only thing they get to see is either Shark Week or, images that other people bring up from the depths. And I kept thinking, wow, if people just have more compelling images, it's going to help to create that sense of stewardship and responsibility of this really fragile environment. So that was also a motivator for me.
Yeah. And you gotta give people a connection to make them love it, because they'll take care of what they love.
Exactly.
So. We had Adam Hanlon as a friend of yours on just the other week, and we were talking the same thing. And it's many of our viewpoints is if we can take good photos and reach out to people that don't normally see this stuff, it'll maybe, like you said, help out with stewardship and provide some sense of
just compel them to
passion and empathy for the marine environment, right?
Dalton, I think your word is the best, connection.
Yeah.
Just to create a connection between the underwater environment and people who aren't lucky enough to visit there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are those of us, like yourself, you grew up sailing, being a lifeguard around the water, and I grew up in South Florida around the ocean, fishing, surfing, swimming, all that good stuff. And you have an appreciation for it, but my appreciation never went below the surface until I started diving.
Right.
And I think
it's a paradigm shift, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's that way with a lot of people, is that the majority of people only see the surface.
Right.
Yep. And the surface looks pretty darn good. So the ocean must be in great shape.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh, and the fish is delicious that I buy at Kelson's or wherever. It's
Exactly.
fine. What are you talking about? There's plenty of it.
So they
There might
just
be a shortage of
assume.
toilet paper, but fish, not an issue.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of things that people don't realize and don't know, and so I think it's definitely you're on the right track with, we bring photos to people to give them a connection, and hopefully they'll find something that they love out of it, and like I said, you take care of the things that you love. So
Yeah, and additionally, the thing that I found about just where I kind of veer off is I found that people really get energy from being creative.
Yeah.
And post-production gives them a way to connect with their own work, not just link it outside, but in a way that's really personal and energizing. And, if you're frustrated doing something like underwater photography, if you have a camera, you can't ever get a sharp picture, or you can't ever get a picture that's not totally full of backscatter, you get less and less interested in doing it because it just seems like so much work. Or because digital cameras now capture so many images, you find yourself totally overwhelmed
Yeah.
with the amount of images you bring home from a trip. So, I started thinking about, well, how can I get people past that barrier where technology is a roadblock to creativity?
Right. Yeah.
And instead, how can I make it so that they really see it as the tool and also as the creative outlet that I do? So that's also been a big motivator for me.
Nice. That's awesome. We saw that you are ACE certified as well, right? For Photoshop and Lightroom?
Yes, I am ACE certified.
Nice.
That's right. That's the, for those that don't know, that's the Adobe formal certification.
Yep.
That you have to get if you want some kind of legitimacy. I felt, not to say people that aren't ACE certified aren't legitimate. I'm not saying that at all, but based on my history that I already griped about earlier about traveling with pros who, pretended they were going to help you with post or whatever, and really they didn't know shit. They, they knew what they had monkeyed around with and figured out for their image, but they didn't really know how to tell you anything. I thought it would be nice if, people who were taking post-production, in particular, post-production workshops, knew that I had some kind of legitimacy in that world, not just as a photographer.
Right. That you've been recognized by the people who make the software that they want to use, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't know if you know anything about the process of becoming an Adobe certified expert, but it's not easy because you have to not only know parts, Lightroom and Photoshop are ridiculously deep programs.
Right.
As an expert, I would say that I maybe know, 30% of what they together can do. More of Lightroom, but less, 30% of Photoshop is probably pushing the limits because Photoshop has 3D rendering. It has scientific, I mean, it's crazy
and
deep.
It's not just that, it's there's also 100 ways to skin a cat, so to speak.
Always.
If there's something you want to do, if there's a goal you want to achieve, I'm sure you could tell someone 10 different ways to do it.
Yeah, and I think your fluency as an editor really depends on how many tricks you have in your bag of tricks.
Right.
So that you can try one, not working, okay, this.
Yep.
Try next one, okay, not working, this. So the thing about the Adobe certification is I liken it to like shit, my driver's license is expired and I'm actually gonna have to take the written test. I have to go look and see, how much the baby weighs before it can ride in the front seat. Shit, I'm never gonna use.
Exactly.
And that's kind of like taking the Adobe certification. You have to learn all kinds of crazy stuff you're never gonna use. Yep. And then to take the test.
It's also a proctored exam.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. You go to a certified center. You're on camera. You're alone in a room. They take your cell phone and all your stuff. You get a pencil they give you, and you have a time limit. It's like the SAT.
And it's not like you're sitting down in front of a computer doing the work. You're taking a pencil and paper test.
Yes, it is multiple choice with a few fill in the answers. Yeah.
It's like very similar to Dalton and I a few years ago when we had to get our drone certification, right? It's it's very technical, and 90% of the stuff they ask you has no relevance to, like, you're not going to be flying airplanes. Like it's a pilot's exam, but you still have to know this stuff just to be qualified and get that certification. But it still gives you some legitimacy. If you're over prepared for anything, you know you're going to be able to handle the 80% of questions that most people come up with. So
yeah, not to jump too far astray, but also the FSC, the firearm safety certificate that you have to take. If you want to buy a handgun or be eligible to do that, you have to know about shotguns, rifles, all different kinds of stuff you're never going to know about, but you need it to pass the test. So all of these certifications are really, broad.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt you to know the other stuff. It's just you're going to forget it in 2.5 seconds after you take the test because you don't use it.
And it's like anything else where, you have the mainstream that everyone knows how to do X, but then every once in a while, some random thing and some weird question gets asked. And it's like, oh, I wonder if this random tidbit topic I learned that had nothing to do with it might be able to apply.
Yes, the crypt of useless knowledge.
Exactly. Every once in a while.
Something creeps out of there.
I wonder what that useless knowledge, what that space is taking up.
Yeah.
It's like, how many times has Zsa Zsa been married? Oh, 37. Wait, E equals MC.
Why do I need to know that one? Exactly.
Yeah. It's exactly right.
Some of the things we remember, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. I wish you could selectively forget to make space.
Right.
It's kind of like I do with my Facebook page.
So
you just go through and cull.
Let's just archive this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So getting back to Go Ask Erin, it's not, so you've got classes that are already pre-recorded that people can download, right?
Yes.
For the getting started.
Yeah, so if you go to the webpage, there are some written tutorials that are free that cover a lot of the information. There are, I think, more than 30 of those that you can just click on and download and print out and do whatever you want to with. And then now we have 30, about to be 32 if I get my act together soon, on-demand videos. Those are the 90-minute to 2-hour videos that are recordings of our live sessions. So the way that we work is if you tune in live for the session, it's totally free. If you want to be able to listen to that session or work along with the session, because on the on-demand sessions, we give you everything I work with. If I work with my own raw photos, I give you those raw photos so that you can work exactly, along with me. So those are our COVID-19 price of $19 each. So yeah, we sell the on-demand ones after we've given the free online session. And I think there's 30 of those right now.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then COVID aside, usually you're typically offering tours and workshops too, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah. So I do a few different kinds of travel related things. One is like an expedition trip. Typically those are to someplace a little more challenging in terms of travel and diving. So it might be Galapagos, Cocos, Komodo, someplace like that. Also typically on a liveaboard. And those are less structured in terms of classes. It's really dive. Yeah. And then when you come up and people are reviewing their images, I'm there to help them either with shooting skills or with post-production on a more one-on-one basis. And then there's a workshop trip in which the diving is also prioritized, but we have a structure of shorter classes to support the diving. So in other words, we might give you an assignment in the morning in the wide angle workshop. We might give you an assignment that you need to get a reef scenic with a diver in the background. And we'll give you a little class in the morning about how exactly to do that. And typically we may have actually scouted out the setup and bring people in so that they can copy basically the technique of the images that we shot earlier. And then we have, then I have something called a boot camp, which is a week-long, hair-raising, not for the faint of heart, fire hose of information about Lightroom or Photoshop. And those are, a week long. There's a beginning one that's kind of 0 to hero. If you really don't know what you're doing or you're unsure and want to kind of pump up your chops a little bit. And then we have I call it intermediate to advanced. What that really is it brings in more Photoshop and spends less time on the logistical organizational side of the software, which with Lightroom is the big stumbling block for many people. So
Yeah.
the beginning one is usually, how do I make this work? How do I make my pictures look better? Awesome. The intermediate one is, okay, I got that down. Now let's add a little dark arts and some sorcery. So that seems to be the most popular thing, even though nobody wants to admit it. But that's definitely what people like.
That's awesome. So I happen to be looking, let me see if I can share here. I happen to be looking on some of your albums, and one of the workshops that I'm guessing wasn't officially yours, but it's kind of the same concept here. Give me just a second, share my screen. Don't worry, it's not bad, it's good.
None of the ones where I'm flashing my tits, please.
No, okay. I thought it was very artistic.
Fewer and fewer as I've gotten older, but every now and then.
Well, the new Photoshop filters help out with it. Neural engine.
Well, they do.
Neural engine,
believe me, Liquify is a winner.
Oh, yeah.
So one of those that popped out because this was, I think you were with, this is a very famous Alex Mustard photo that is done, in my mind, better by Erin Quigley in this shot that you did, I'm guessing, in the Caymans. I think was one of the, tell us about this particular workshop that you're at and what you guys were working on.
Right. So I love Alex. It's great. And I also love to take other people's workshops. So this is a technique. It's a slow shutter speed technique in which you have to basically block out all the light except what's going to hit the very top of your subject. And while the slow shutter speed is open, you spin the camera. And so the light from the strobes is so fast that it will freeze whatever it hits. But as the light falls off, the subject will blur.
Yeah. So
in this case, I kind of experimented by trying to do it in camera, and then by taking the raw footage, just a still photo, and taking it into Photoshop and kind of experimenting with the techniques in Photoshop that give you the same options. There's some little difference, but I actually find the Photoshop one is a lot less frustrating.
Go figure, right?
And a lot more controllable in terms of the results. But of course, it's a different kind of skill. The skill to get it in camera is a whole different story, and it does have a slightly different feel. But yeah, this is what I do if I'm at the end of a dive typically, or I can't find anything to shoot.
Right.
It works on it at so many different subjects.
And for our listeners, again, the disclaimer that I put on all of our photographers' interviews, anytime we're referring to a photo, if you happen to be using Overcast, it'll be on the chapter art. Otherwise, check out the show notes in the blog, and we'll have links to the photos that we reference in any of our discussions here. So, but yeah, I mean, anything. This is great to talk about. Just as an example, like you may send out on your workshops, hey guys, why don't you try this technique or that?
Right.
Have strobes where instead of the standard strobes facing out, I'm actually going to take strobes and face him towards my head for some crazy reason. Why?
Yeah, as far out as they can go, pointing back at your face. Yeah. That's how this is lit.
Right, exactly. So it's something
way out.
It's something that, again, if you're just getting into lighting or photography, it's not something you think of. Like I send my strobes at whatever I want to shoot, and then now I learn a little bit about backscatter, and the strobes aren't forcing directly at the subject, and now you're talking about all these other crazy fun techniques that you may learn during a workshop.
Oh yeah, my gosh.
Creative, right?
There are people who, experts like Alex, who really pioneer, these techniques. And, there's a dive guide called Dharma in Indonesia, that in Bali, technically, that I work with also, who just showed me the most amazing lighting techniques using crazy stuff like a steel wool, put behind the subject and lit with two different colors, and then you blur it out and you get this beautiful kind of disco effect for your nudibranch or whatever it is. So I really respect the people that pioneer those techniques, and I'm more than happy to try and replicate them in post, and then I can teach you how to do it. If you've missed a shot, well, why not experiment with it and see
Yeah.
if you can't
Yeah.
make it into something else compelling?
Yeah. And
I
those
think
are,
that's always been one of the things for me is people are like, well, if you didn't get it done in camera, then it's not a photo. I'm like, you don't understand. People have been doing post-production long before Lightroom and Photoshop came out.
right.
Yes. And I mean, people forget that when someone says, for instance, but what did it really look like underwater? What color really was it? Oh, well, do you mean before I lit it up with my YSD3 or before I lit it up with my torch?
Right.
Or do you mean before I had the wide angle lens or the close-up lens with the diopters or the bug eye filter? Do you mean holding it in my hand out of the air? What do you mean? It is an artistic expression.
Yes. Digital art.
And it has always been that the tools available to the artist are legitimate. There's one, I always put in this disclaimer, it's totally legitimate. You're the artist, right? You do whatever you want to do to make the picture look the way it is, but you can't lie about it. You have to be transparent and you have to play by other people's rules if you're in their arena. So if you're submitting something to a contest or to a newspaper, or even in some way, if you're selling it in a natural history gallery, you have to be transparent about what you composited, what you changed. And there's no shame in it. You know, the only shame is in doing it poorly or lying about it.
Right. Well, I think that's the big thing is that, you know, you do it, if you do it well, people question did they Photoshop that? Did they not Photoshop
welcome
it?
to my world.
That's when you know it's done right.
I'm ever going to be able to take a good picture in camera again and not have people just go, oh, that. Oh, she shopped that.
Right.
And it's terrible because, you know, Photoshop, to say something is Photoshopped has become this very derogatory term. But actually, when you think about
the fashion industry for that,
you know, Ansel Adams and other people who were really masters in the darkroom, they didn't take shit for doing that. It was amazing. You know, they became famous because of it.
Right.
But now I feel, I'll just be completely blunt with you about this.
Please
because
do.
I know it's true. I feel like most of the people, not all, but most of the people who claim that if you don't get it in camera, it's not legitimate, they are saying that because they're terrified of not being able to do it in post, or B, they can't do it in post. They cannot, simply do not understand computers. They cannot understand the software. They don't know how to make it work, and they're bitter, primarily old people.
No, I agree. I agree with you 95% of that. The only places I push back is, so I shoot professional sports. So if you're shooting journalism, you can't really do any post.
Oh no, that's my disclaimer.
And
you have to be
exactly, right. And the other is, so I grew up in the days of film. I used to shoot for car magazines and stuff, and it was the first guy I worked for. Just Kip was one of the best bosses and mentors anyone could have, in my opinion. He pushed, get it right in camera. But I think there's a difference between get it right in camera and not doing any post, right? So get it right in camera is, you make sure there's trash and just move the trash. I don't need to go back in Photoshop to remove trash or a trash can. You know, make sure your headlights are turned on, you know, if you're shooting a car, you know.
Sure.
Just all these different things. You do those in camera to get the photo right in camera. But then you take it into post and do all your enhancements and everything like that.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact of the matter is, most images that come from digital cameras need a little bit of post, period. Absolutely. They need sharpening, they need color adjustment, period. So
every photo, I think, even back in film days, needed post.
There's kind of a interesting symbiosis that I've noticed teaching this stuff over the years too, is that if you don't get it right in camera and you consistently make the same mistakes and you have to fix it in post, what happens is, as you get better in post, you get better as a photographer. Because you understand what makes the picture work artificially in post. And now all of a sudden the connection happens, like, oh shit, I got to put a light here, not here, you know. You start understanding. So there's a cool symbiosis that I see with my clients and my students, that as they get better and more fluent as editors, I see the pictures coming out of their cameras improving too. Nobody's that I see, I mean, this is kind of a rookie move to take the picture for post in a lazy way. I mean, sometimes you take a picture for post because you realize the dynamic range is too big for your camera, and you're never going to get the picture of the sunball and the black frogfish, right?
Right.
So, you know, you shoot for post by taking multiple exposures, knowing that you're going to composite them to get the image. But mostly, really, what happens is people, you know, aren't shooting like, oh, I'm going to get this really shitty picture and take it into Photoshop or Lightroom and spend 9 hours and get back a ho-hum, slightly cleaned up version of the shitty picture.
Right.
Once they get into post and they realize the limitations, because there are limitations, they start being better photographers. So it's you know, getting better in post improves your photography as well.
Absolutely.
Where do you stand on tools outside, like other post-processing tools outside of your standard Lightroom and Photoshop? Do you have anything else that's pretty common in your arsenal?
So I do use a couple of plugins, but they're not primarily for visual differences. They're more to help me generate tools. So for instance, I have a couple of panels that I really like that generate luminosity masks, which is otherwise a super tedious process and very sloppy, and then getting rid of all of them is a mess. So I have a couple panels that I use to generate that. One of them is from a guy called Greg Benz. He has a really good luminosity panel generator. In terms of plugins like On One, or, you know, some of the other plugins, I have the advantage of, you know, being skilled in Photoshop. So a lot of them, I feel like, why do I have this other thing? I can do this in Photoshop. And there's a big difference. A lot of them do not maintain the raw data. So if you come in with a raw image and you generate it through one of these other plugins, a lot of the time what winds up is you export a TIFF or you export a Photoshop document. You have abandoned the raw photo at that point, unless you, like, you know, resort to working with smart objects or some other more exotic workflow. And then again, I would ask the question, why? You know, is it really something that you can't do in post? One of my favorites was, and now it's been, I think it is part of the Google suite that they bought, but it was Silver Effects Pro, which was really a great plugin for black and whites, not because you couldn't generate the same kind of monochrome in Photoshop, but because it gave you so many options and it was engineered just for that. So things that sharpen, things that enlarge, things that generate tools, very focused utilities are things I use and approve of a lot. And, you know, if you're someone who doesn't, you know, you don't like the subscription model of Adobe or whatever, you have some other reason, and that's why you're going to, okay, get over yourself. It's here to stay. But, you know, but you want to, like, be an outsider, be a renegade and use this other software. Great. You go. Whatever works for you, do it. But just understand that, you know, Photoshop and Lightroom, they are the standards for professional photography. And so you're going to have a lot more resource for those than you will for anything else. A lot more connection between other software suites than you will for any of the plugins.
Yeah, but I think
they've been the gold standard for, they've earned that one for
years
and years of,
for sure.
Oh my God, the latest Photoshop thing.
I was just going to ask that.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
Oh my God. So the thing that totally, like, kills it for me, you know, the Lightroom, the color grading thing is okay. I think it's useful, but it takes a totally different approach.
Yeah.
The sky replacement in Photoshop, excuse me, the water replacement filter. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. We were very happy that they finally put something like that in there. Because I know Skylum Luminar had started doing that, and we're like, Photoshop's got to get on this.
Yeah, and you know they've got an eye out for all that other specifically engineered stuff.
For sure.
But I mean, wow.
So cool.
So I did on the last online session, I did some examples of replacing like shitty blown out sunballs with beautiful clear sunballs because I have had a habit for a long time, just because I do Photoshop. But if I see a beautiful scenario of just open water with light rays and a sunball, I shoot the shit out of that.
Yeah.
Because that's fodder. That's really good, rich material. If I am going to bite the bullet and go to the dark side and composite, I want that stuff.
Yep.
And now I'm so glad. And I even have like a multi-layered, I don't know, it has like 50 layers now of just divers.
Nice.
In different colored water that I've taken pictures of. And it's like, wow, I was just able to just take the water with the sun rays and the diver and put it behind the really pretty but kind of boring reef scenic, and pow.
Right.
Yeah.
And it did such a good job. It's startling, really.
And we were talking about the neural filters that they released as well. Yeah.
Well, that they're pitching. I mean, it's hard to kind of get them to work exactly right now.
Right, but it's coming.
My favorite is the happiness filter.
Yes, the happiness filter.
Which actually generates teeth.
I think they need to.
It's kind of creepy.
Well, and the turning of the head, Todd was talking to me about that.
Well, I've used Liquify to do that for a long time.
Right. Yeah. But the fact that it's just a slider and it does quite job. Although the happiness filter does not go too far to the other side. I need a complete depression. Like, make this person look really, really sad, like they've been stuck in the house.
Yeah, like,
this is what I look like on COVID.
That's right.
Like tear generators.
The sad filter just looks kind of like.
It doesn't go far enough.
It's kind of pouty.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not. You want Greek tragedy. You want Medea.
I do. I personally do. But but
it's my baby.
But this
just anything. It's anything that can save us time, right?
Yeah.
Anything that can save us time. Where like used to do skin softening and things like that, frequency separations and all these things. Now I have a slider that I can use, and it might only work. And it might only work 50% of the time, but that 50% is going to be great.
No, it's great, and then you have so much control over it because you can layer mask out what you don't want and use blending modes to make it work. I mean, it's so cool to have all those fun.
Yeah, and there's so much like I haven't not had time to play with it because it just as we're doing this interview now, they just had their Adobe Max presentation where they did all this release just a week ago officially to the public, where you saw these things. But it's awesome, sky replacement, and as you said, if you start shooting beautiful water scenes, you've got your underwater version of sky replacement ready to go. And like you said, divers.
Well, I mean, I'm going to start encouraging people to do it because why not?
Yeah,
exactly.
Why not? You have a beautiful image of something underwater. You white balance it. It looks great, except the whole surface of the water turns pink.
Right.
And it's really hard to make that look reasonable.
Right.
To hell with it. Yeah. Take the same scene without the critter in it. Just get the water. Yep. And now you don't have to white balance anything. The water stays looking awesome.
Yep.
Put it back into the shot.
Yep.
I mean, it's the same water.
Yeah.
Minus the subject.
That's what I was about to say. I think the only time that I kind of go back to drawing lines, like we were talking about earlier, is that so with some of the topside photos and stuff, I do a lot of like starscapes and things like that. And I think if you're going to do a sky replacement, the sky has to legitimately be able to have been in that position. Like you shouldn't take the Milky Way with the galactic center that you can only get shooting south from the northern hemisphere and put it in a north-facing image.
Yeah, it's where do polar bears live again?
Right, exactly. You have the Aurora Borealis over Miami. We gotta. I think there are certain things that, and you can do that as long as you, like you said, as long as you're transparent about it. This is digital art,
Right.
That is digital art.
Right.
It's a totally
It's a
different
different
thing
animal.
if you're claiming it to be natural history
Right.
or journalism.
Right.
It's
Right.
totally different.
Right. But I think if you want to have Aurora Borealis over Miami, by all means, you are okay to do it. It's like unless you're Dalton or working for a newspaper agency, it's all digital art now. Like everyone in my mind, Dalton and I always
As
have.
long as it's not meant to.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say.
As long as it's not.
Yeah, you go. You're the guest of honor. Sorry.
Zoom. How I love you, Zoom.
There's no lag.
No. I was just going to say that if you have something that's digital art like that, it's just a whole different critter. It doesn't even fit in really to the photography thing. It's like a pastiche,
or it's more like a surrealism kind of
exactly
painting,
but in my mind astrophotography is that. Like, you don't see, when we look at stars in the natural, you don't see the galactic core like that in real life, but the camera does, because it can keep its so it's already art. And the fact that you're going to do a blue hour shot and blend it in with it, so most people that see that shot assume the photographer just took one image, and unless you're a photographer, and just figure, no, they must have gone somewhere.
We're all laughing at that,
right? But that's the whole thing. Is it's already digital art, and most most normal people that view art are just going to assume, no, that was the shot, unless you're also happen to be a photographer. But so long as it looks natural, and it's believable, that's fine. And like you said, if you're submitting it for something other than your own personal gallery of work, then you definitely need to say, here's how I did it. Here's how I did it. But even on your own, the question is, even in your own portfolio, how much do you have to disclose to say, well, okay, the moon wasn't really half that. It wasn't like gigantic, right?
I transformed that by 77%. Yeah.
Right.
I think that there's a real advantage to putting everything in metadata that you do, that you can embed in an image at your choice. You can choose to embed the metadata about what you did. This is a composite. This has had spot removal. This has had, whatever it is that you've done. You can actually put that in a comment section or in a description in the metadata of the image, but then you can choose whether to embed that at delivery or not, depending upon the use. And that way, actually, it's just a practical thing. You remember what you did too.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Like, I think again,
we're
all living
honestly,
in digital art.
Yeah. Now. Honestly, I think the people that care about that don't matter, because they're usually haters that are just trying to hate.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh, that wasn't taken in camera.
There's a big sour grapes contingent.
Because if you're supplying that image to an ad agency, let's say, they don't care. They care about your ability to get the shot that they want. Like if you're showing them a portfolio.
Yeah, hey, an ad agency, skip that. Scuba Diving Magazine, they don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care.
Yep.
They don't care. As long as it looks good and is factually accurate, they don't care what you did to get it.
Right.
So
which is a whole other topic.
Let's not even.
Yeah. I mean, have you tried using the happiness slider on a frogfish yet, Erin?
You can't. It makes me so mad because they will only recognize human faces.
We need a free swimming octopus filter.
Right.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? You're just like, whatever.
Right.
Octopus Vogue.
Right.
Exactly.
That would be awesome.
That's funny.
So you worked with Scuba Diving Magazine too. I think I saw in your. I'm sure you've had several photos and stuff.
I did for a long time. Like I think almost 4 years.
Nice.
Yeah, I did. I before COVID, I was traveling 7 months out of the year, often without internet, doing like 400 dives a year, and it just got to be so. I felt so bad. I was always late. I could never get it done in time. I was like, in the Singapore airport, like frantically trying to upload. I've got like 3 seconds to get to the gate, and I'm like, I'm not going to have internet again for 3 weeks. So yeah, it got to be a little bit tough to do. And I think that people in general, like the Scuba Diving Magazine target audience, they are more interested in, new gear
Yeah.
kind of thing. They don't
Yeah.
go there for technical help unless it's about gear, that kind of stuff. Shooting
Right.
techniques is a good way to go there.
I think there's a
It's
small.
really hard to come up with an editing technique that you can describe in 700 words, because it's very limited.
Yeah.
700 words that isn't either too advanced, too elementary, or redundant, that you haven't done before. It's really, really hard. I think I just kind of don't know what else I can do now.
Right.
But but I mean, I'm sure they have that problem in all aspects of it. Like, how many times do you want to go to Komodo and report on it? Right. Okay. Well, now there's a new boat there.
Apparently endless.
Right. Right. They still got to push something out. So
Not
maybe,
to put too fine a point on it.
maybe you can,
Yes.
maybe you can apply that to post-processing articles that you do for them as well. Who knows? But anyways, but that's
I just try and repackage it in something else. The big juicy center can be the same, but the costume around it can be different. It's and
exactly.
people learn different ways too.
Yeah.
So you find a different way of getting into the same material is also valuable for that material, because somebody might trigger to that more than they would one that you've done before.
Yeah. Now, do you find being an educator more satisfying, or being a photographer more satisfying, or doing post? What satisfies Erin?
It's weird. I don't think I can imagine doing one without the other. For me, they're definitely not mutually exclusive. I shoot because I love shooting underwater, and I love working on my own images. I can't imagine shooting without doing the post. I love teaching because it's what teaches me. So I learn more from teaching than I do from anything else. I mean, every single time I teach a class, whether it's with a group of students who respond to me in person, like a boot camp, or whether it's through these online webinars where I'm forced to have basically an hour and a half monologue in which I better get it right. It really teaches me about how I think about what I'm doing as an artist, but also it stimulates me to look into different techniques and different things that otherwise I wouldn't, because you just get used to doing something you've been doing for a long time. You do it quickly, it works, it's fine. But when someone asks you a question about it and you actually have to verbalize an answer in a way that they can understand, instead of saying, well, I've just been doing it that way forever.
Right.
It's a complete mind fuck, I was going to say, but it's mind blowing.
It is. Both of those things.
How educational teaching is, and I love it. I'm passionate about it. I'm as passionate about teaching as I am about my shooting. And I think people that come to a boot camp or something will see that I am a dog with a bone about them getting the topic. Yeah. We are not skating through this and it's day 5. Whew, thank God they're gone, because they're never going to get it. No, that is not how I work. Right. I have a stake in people learning the stuff that I'm teaching. It validates me as a teacher. If people aren't learning it, I'm doing something wrong. So I have to reevaluate my techniques. I mean, we talked briefly about this before, but on a completely wild, unimaginable part of my life, I started helping someone teach a gun class that's for people like me who are terrified of guns, right? Terrified of guns. I was assaulted at gunpoint as a kid, and my whole life have been terrified of guns. There's 394 million of them in America, more than one per person. Just thought, this isn't going away anywhere. I have to learn how to do this. But I had to really, I convinced someone that I knew of a totally different mindset that there were a lot of people like me, and I had to decide how it would be taught, how you can teach this thing to people who, I know why I was afraid. Why is everybody else afraid? It kind of goes to post-production too. I mean, people are afraid of Photoshop. I don't know why they're afraid. I love it. I think it's great, but you have to be able to verbalize it. You have to be able to figure out what tools you're going to demonstrate it with. You have to be able to, and this is, I think, one of the most important things about teaching is if you are really fluent in the thing that you're teaching, you know where the roadblocks are.
Right.
You know where people are going to fail. You know where it's going to be confusing. So if you can get ahead of it and say, okay, look, we're coming to a dark, scary part of the road.
Right.
Just stick near me. Trust me, I will get you, you know, to the warm little cabin in the woods with the bread in the oven and the fire and where everything's fine. But until then, we're going to talk about layer masks. Or, you know, until then, we're going to talk about trigger control. Or until whatever it is, I think that as a teacher, you know, you really have to investigate how you learn. Yeah,
and I think there's something for when you see your students get it.
Oh, I love that. The aha moment.
There's so that I think that's one of the things that make me happiest when I have students is when you see something click and then they get it and you're just like, okay, that's
I agree. I love it.
Well, for newer underwater photographers, is there something that you see that is like the most common thing that you need to harp on to someone from a post-processing, they're just getting used to Lightroom and or Photoshop? What are some of those things that if you're just getting into it that really just give them the most bang for the buck? Did anything jump out at you?
The most bang for the buck is do not skip the organizational part in Lightroom to get to fixing your pictures.
Yep.
Do not skip it because two things will happen. A, you won't be able to find your pictures ever again.
Yep.
And you could accidentally throw them away. And B, Lightroom's superpower is the organizational side of it.
Absolutely.
Right.
It really is. And talk about life-changing and talk about being able to get to being creative. You can't be truly creative if you're just so overwhelmed by worrying about, do I have this backed up? What version am I working on? If you embrace the learning curve, and there is a learning curve because it's not intuitive, it's getting a little better, but you know, if you embrace that beginning part of Lightroom at the beginning, you're going to be golden. If you don't, you're going to have trouble down the road. It's unavoidable. It's just going to be a mess. So, and then troubleshooting is really hard if you haven't embraced the beginning and you don't understand how it works.
Right.
And then with Photoshop, you know, don't go there if you don't have to.
Right.
But I think for underwater photographers, if you're shooting and there's backscatter, you have to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the Lightroom tools suck for that. Right. They suck.
Yeah, I mean, Lightroom has been great since it came out at doing a lot of the basic heavy lifting that Camera Raw used to do for Photoshop. That now, when my dogs are going nuts for something, but now, so I've been working in Photoshop since Photoshop 2 back in like '93. And it's now a lot of stuff. I only go into Photoshop for like the real heavy lifting, you know, compositing, cloning, having to rebuild something, things like that. Removing backscatter.
Content aware fill.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's just say.
Exactly. Yeah. And I wish that Lightroom would get up to date with their content aware brushes and their cloning brushes, but I hate to be a conspiracy theorist about this, but I don't know why Adobe would do that. It's like, you know, they want to have you need the handshake there. I think maybe I'm imagining that, but no, I don't think so.
And I think it's built on,
and also they work so
math. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say the algorithms are so different, and the way that the information is routed through the GPU is so different in both programs that it would really be a sea change for Lightroom.
Lightroom would have to be rebuilt on the ground up when it comes to that. Doesn't mean they can't do it, and they've already I mean, just the, healing brushes are a lot faster than it used to be horrible.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's so much better now than it used to be, but to really
and the new update is really good too.
Yeah. So I think it's, I would love it if it's worked as well as Photoshop, of course, to not have to go there for certain things. But like you said, there's probably part of it they don't want to cannibalize each other's products to some degree. Right. But I think there's a big part of it. It's just not built that way, and they'd have to throw everything out and start over again to really do it.
Something else I would say to new editors who want the power that Photoshop has is that don't learn everything. You only need to learn what you need to learn. Agreed. And my theory is that there are like 6 things in Photoshop. There are 6 concepts only, half a dozen concepts that if you learn it, Photoshop is your oyster. There's nothing that you can't do as a photographer if you just learn these 6 basic concepts. Now, some of the concepts like layers and layer masking, take a little bit of work to wrap your head around. But it's a simple idea that's difficult in practice because of the visual confusion that happens when you're working on images and layers and layer masks. But if you learn the little tricks, there are little tricks. Turn the eyeball on and off on every layer to see exactly what's in it. Learn the keyboard shortcuts to turn them on and off with keyboard shortcuts. All of a sudden, it's like, oh my gosh, just learning that one concept has opened up so many new horizons. So, I think that just going to Photoshop to learn what you need to learn and not worry about anything else until you're ready is a really good suggestion for people who are just starting. All you want to do is remove backscatter. Great. Learn more tools than the clone tool.
Right.
All the tools that you can remove backscatter with, but maybe you don't need to composite.
Right.
Learn exactly only what you need to learn and don't stress about the rest.
And Photoshop has been, or Adobe, I should say, has been great about making some of those changes in Photoshop where it's easier to, like blending modes. It used to be you had to know what the blending mode did because it didn't give you any kind of preview. Right? Yeah. So, but now you can just scroll over it and it shows you. And so little things like that, I think, make a huge difference in understanding what those tools do.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And I'd say only to add to that is don't let since Photoshop's an older tool and it's designed as such, it's not as friendly to newer photographers or post processors like Lightroom is, right? Don't let it intimidate you. There's a lot of stuff buried behind menu bars. Well, that's just how we worked in the 90s and earlier. That's just how every application was built. If you think of the old Microsoft Word and Excel, everything was just hiding behind menus. And it's better now, but it's still a version of that. And because of that, it seems inaccessible. Yeah. It's not. It's not that bad, and you just have to play around and experiment and not get intimidated by a couple of those features, and you'll get
one of the things I have on the website that's for free that you can download is a keyboard shortcut list.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people in Lightroom, knowing keyboard shortcuts will make you a better editor. But you don't have to. You can get around Lightroom without it. In Photoshop, you have to. You have to. It is de rigueur. You have to. Yeah. Just because of those menus. There you go. Yeah. Just because of those menus. And by the way, you'll see also, we talked about before, don't ignore the organizational part of Lightroom. You can download a version of my recommended folder structure as well. Nice. So when you're starting Lightroom, you start off on the right foot. As you get better, you can customize it to your heart's content. But what I tell people is you're a beginner. You came to me to tell you how to do this. Just do what I goddamn tell you to do until you're ready to do otherwise. The structure is something that works for everyone who's a traveling diver. It can be underwater trips. It can be your grandmother's 90th birthday. It can be anything that you break down. But people, in the effort to become organized, get too granular. Yeah. They make too many folders. Yeah. They break it down into too many different elements, and it's a recipe for disaster. They don't understand that. Like, folders to me are the enemy. Yeah. As few folders as possible, even though that's unintuitive when you're getting organized. Feels like the more you had, the more it's absolutely untrue. So
Yep.
I think, getting again, back to that, the basics,
Yep.
the folder structure, understanding how a database works.
Right.
Yeah.
A few keyboard shortcuts. You don't have to memorize all of them by rote, but
No.
memorize the first 6 that you use all the time. Command or
Yep.
Control
Yep.
A, all the things that you're always using. And in Photoshop, you have to memorize the menus to find anything. Why don't you just memorize a keyboard shortcut?
Exactly.
And if there's, the way I always talk to students is that if there's anything that you have to do 6 or more times, make an action for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. And that's one of the things that there are a lot of actions out there.
Yeah.
Right.
If you don't know how to make an action, you can just import the action and use it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Lots of good.
And there was go ahead, Todd.
No, I was going to say lots of good tips, Erin. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Just and if you ever have any questions, you can just go ask Erin.
Right.
Yes. The downside to naming your company Go Ask Erin is that who would know? People ask you questions all the time.
That's right.
So, to be clear, one of the things is, I welcome everybody's questions, but I am not going to tell you which computer system to buy. I am not going to help you set up your gear.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you which camera to buy. That's not my wheelhouse.
Right.
If you have a question about a particular image, or if you have a question about Photoshop or Lightroom, or to some degree Premiere with Go Ask Erin because of Joel's expertise, we're happy to field all of that. But, if it's like, where should I go on my vacation? And should I get the new Canon? I heard it heats up too much. No. No, don't ask
someone else. Don't ask Erin.
Don't ask Erin.
Don't ask Erin. Right.
Yeah.
So speaking of cameras, what cameras are you using right now, Erin?
I am shooting a Canon 1DX Mark III. Well, I say shooting. I haven't really been able to put it in the water yet. Yeah. So I have a Canon 1DX Mark III and not a cam housing. Nice. The thing about the Canon camera for me is, this is a very personal opinion. So in the Nikon and Canon wars, there's so much else out there now. The Sonys are awesome, all the mirrorless, but talking about single lens reflex, full frame cameras. Okay. If you are only shooting stills, I think the Nikon has an advantage. It's this giant file size. The resolution is great. And I'm talking about the high-end Nikon. I'm talking about the D850 or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
D850 and the new Z7.
Amazing camera with great glass. Yep. Really good glass. I am a hybrid shooter. I shoot both video and stills. And underwater video is particularly difficult because of the way that you need to color correct while you're shooting. You either have to light the shit out of it, or you have to be able to do a custom white balance as you're descending or ascending. About every 10 feet, you have to really set a new white balance in order to get a reasonable rendition. There are very, very few cameras that can do that. And the Canon underwater white balance for video is like unbelievable. It's like you're shooting through a red filter. I mean, it's a 60-foot, somewhere up online, I have I don't know how long ago it was. It was when the first 1DX came out, but I have some footage of a grouper getting cleaned in Little Cayman, and it was at 60 feet. It was with natural light. It looks like it's in air. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's so perfectly color corrected. Yes. It's beautiful. All the warm colors are warm. And so Canon, for me, has an edge on the video part for an SLR. The Sonys and stuff, the Micro Four Thirds have a whole different thing going on. But if I were only shooting stills, I would probably look at the high-end Nikons. Only shooting video, I might look at a Sony,
right,
or a Red or a Blackmagic, another one of those cameras. Or even the GoPro on the low end of the budget. Amazing,
yeah.
right?
Love my GoPros.
Yep. But if you are a hybrid shooter, I think the Canon hybrid underwater shooter, I should
right.
say. I think the Canon has some advantages.
Yeah, the Canon definitely, and it has some advantages on land too. The autofocus for
frame
video,
rate, too.
the autofocus for video on the Canon is just
all
much
the
better
video
than
elements,
much better than what Nikon has had previously. I know they've been switching over to the phase detection.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
Canon
getting
uses,
a custom white balance underwater with a Nikon, you just want to open a vein.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just not reliable.
Yeah.
So
And it's interesting, and I don't go ahead, Todd.
I was going to just out of curiosity. So what is your typical standard technique? Do you take a white balance card, or do you eyeball it? Like since I'm not a big
it'll depend on the situation, right? If I do have a card that I carry with me, but I find that I use it only in situations where there's not immediate action happening. So if it's a setup, if I want to capture a reef scenic or something like that, and I have time, I'll use the card, because it's actually kind of hard. You have to hold it out here, and you got this heavy camera and the whole thing.
Yes.
I have found that the best thing to white balance on for me is just rubble.
Yep.
Not anything white, not anything like sand doesn't have enough texture to get the best white balance. For me, it's like rubble. And even if it's slightly yellow or slightly purple or something like that,
it's close enough.
It's close enough for post, where I mean, just a little nudge in post is going to give me what I want.
Yep.
So anything, I don't go crazy if I'm mid water, I'll shoot up at the surface of the water.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And do that, or I'll try and do my hand, which is just as hard, by the way, as holding a white balance card, but you don't unclip it from your BC.
Yes.
Mostly.
Yes.
But yeah.
Very cool. Just curious. My white
so
balance card is always getting lost, so I just gave up on that.
Right.
Yeah, you gotta you gotta get two big double enders and clip it off with multiple double enders. Only use one clip, so it'll weight it down to the bottom if you're gonna use it.
Nice. So I got to ask Erin a question for you with in regards to white balance and custom white balance. I've personally found that there are times that it's better for me to do a custom white balance than trying to correct the white balance in post.
Yes. For stills or video, you mean, or both? For
both. Stills mostly, but
yes. So, but it has a lot to do with the conditions. So if you are able to shoot your subject with the sun behind you and you're 60 feet or above, and you have a camera that does a good custom white balance underwater, then but what happens is you're unable to knock back hard cast shadows and things like that when you do a custom white balance. So again, if you don't need the advantages that, for instance, a fill light gives you, then that's great. And it's the deeper you go, the darker it gets, the bluer it gets, the more extreme a correction has to be made, the more noise is going to be introduced, and the harder it's going to be in post to shift it at all. So I found that when I do a custom white balance for stills, it's really hard to additionally white balance in post. It's a whole different push-pull on the colors. So I would say I agree with you if the situation is right.
Right. Fair enough.
Good answer. I like it. Another freebie from Erin.
There we go.
I love it. Well,
now you've had a taste. Your first one's free. After that, you got to pay.
First one's free. Yeah, exactly. Actually, they're all free if you tune in live.
So if you tune in live, otherwise, Erin will very happily meet with you. She has an hourly rate, I think, is posted on her site also. So
I do.
If you want some private lessons, you can do that as well. So all sorts of options.
If you're really, really brave.
Yeah.
I know that we kind of hit on some conservation and environmental stuff earlier. Are there any groups that you are a part of or interact with as far as whether it be shark savers or love the oceans or any particular group that you're affiliated with or
just passionate about?
Just passionate about? Yeah.
I like Conservation International, and I do belong to like a bazillion conservation groups. So it's hard to say which one. I mean, you know, I travel a lot to the Maldives, and the Manta Project there is really great.
Nice.
So there's just like Shark Savers. I do love Shark Savers is great. I tend to steer clear of like Sea Shepherds and things that are like really entirely political,
Right.
Because I think that although they can have the most impact sometimes, the ones that work steadily and quietly in the background and don't have as much overhead, I think are kind of the ways to go. I also think that you know, conservation in a giant part is litigation. And so when you find groups that are active in supporting you know, good litigation and good laws
And
that have to do with the marine environment, that's a really good one. I'm trying to think of the one I'm thinking about now is the it's not the ACLU, but it's 4 letters like that. Shit, I can't remember what it is, but all they do is lobby for underwater causes and push litigation. So like having shark finning banned, or even having the transfer on airplanes of shark fins to different places in the United States banned. Those people do that work. They're not in the water. It's not sexy, but it's arguably more important than any of the other stuff that we see on camera.
Yeah, and getting marine reserves
protected
put
areas,
into place, and
MPAs,
protected areas, yeah. For
That's
sure.
awesome. So I think let's transfer to more on the personal side. Now that we covered, I think, a lot about Go Ask Erin. I want to know.
You did find a picture of me flashing my tips.
I
didn't
did. Well, so
but he used Liquify.
On a related note, are there any memorable dive experiences? Speaking of flashing, that you jump out at you, like some of your favorite dives. It doesn't have to be photography related. But
there are a couple of things that spring to mind. One is that I have a younger sister, Noelle, who when we were growing up was so obsessed with Jaws. I mean, just obsessed with Jaws, obsessed with sharks. And I, at the time, wasn't into it at all. And I was like, oh my God, enough already. But as we got older and I got into diving, I wanted to, she wasn't really a diver. I mean, she got certified, but she didn't dive a lot. She had kids instead. And so I eventually was in the position where I was like, Noelle, for your birthday, because her birthday is one day in front of mine, I was like, I'm going to take you to, Isla Guadalupe, and we're going to see great white sharks, and it's totally safe. You're going to be in a cage. You don't even need to be certified scuba diver, but you are. But if you just want to be at the surface, it's no big deal. And she was like, oh, no. I have seen those YouTube videos. I have seen what happens when the shark crashes into the cage and people are falling out the bottom, and no. And I was like, Noelle, it doesn't happen. There's it's just so rare. And, it just doesn't happen. So we go on a trip, and it's the first day out at the island, and she's nervous. So I say, okay, I'm going to go. I'll go first. And you can just get your stuff together and just watch how it happens. And you don't have to be stressed out, without knowing what's going on. So I get in a cage, goes down, fucking shark gets into the cage. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. How can this happen? We're in one of the deep cages, and the dive master's on the top, stomping on a canvas bag full of fish heads or whatever. And the sharks are coming in, and all the senoritas, those little fish are around. The shark can't see, and the dive master can't see, and we can't see. And all of a sudden, boom, something's happening. I don't know what it is, but I feel like, a canary in a cage, it's getting shaken. The regulator gets ripped out of my mouth, because the shark actually is caught in the cabling and is like twisting around. So everything's getting ripped out. So the 4 of us in the cage are frantically going for the regs on the tanks and strapped in the corner of the cage. Who knows what happened to my camera? I pretty much I think, well, I never let it go, but I wasn't shooting. And I'm thinking the whole time, God damn it, Noelle is going to be so mad. And sure enough, the shark gets out of the cage, and we get pulled up to the surface, and my sister Noelle is like this. Oh my God, Erin, you lied to me. She's so mad. I'm never going in. it was, very memorable. She did go in, and we had a great time.
Okay.
I was said, now in the cage, it will never happen again.
Right.
But that was a good one. And then another
That's
thing
funny.
that springs to mind is my first experience of a large school of fish, like a massive school of fish, which was in Cocos, and it was a school of jacks. It must have been like a quarter of a mile long. This was years ago, and it was just massive. And I remember being in the middle of it and feeling, just the how a school of fish kind of creates its own current, and just feeling like I wanted to just be there in the middle of it forever. Like it was just fascinating to me. And in a similar thing, the first time that I was ever in the water with whales, with humpback whales in Tonga, and it's just snorkeling, but we got in, my friend Jennifer O'Neill and I got in, and there was a mom and calf and a escort, and the escort was singing, and they were right below us. And I was pretty jaded by this point. I mean, this was only a couple of years ago. And I just was like, oh, I couldn't even take the picture. It's so beautiful. I could feel it. I was just floating there. And back in the back of my head, I was like, take the fucking picture. Take the fucking picture. I was like, no, I just want to have the memory. It was great. It was really good.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
And did you get the picture?
I got the picture.
Good.
I did get the picture.
Oh, of course. The little voice at the back of the head always wins.
The little voice wins out eventually, yeah. Another thing I love, it's not like a totally memorable dive, but I think everyone has had this experience, so I'll mention it, is when everything goes right against all odds. You can't believe it's happening in front of you.
Yep.
I love those times. Those are my favorite things, not just because you're getting a great picture, but because you're seeing something unbelievable happen. You're set up on a piece of rock hoping that the octopus comes out, and the octopus comes out and starts mating with another octopus, and they're looking in the camera, and they're all glossy, and they're all ready to go. Oh my, those moments when the universe provides and everything falls into place are still what I dive for. I still love that stuff.
Awesome. Well, speaking of dives, I know that you said at one point you were diving like 400 times a year, so you must have a pretty big catalog racked up.
Oh God, don't even talk to me about it. It's that thing that the cobbler's children have no shoes. It's like, I tell people to be organized and have the catalog, but my problem is, I've got a ton of images and video, time consuming, as you know, racked up. And when I'm on a trip, I don't get a chance to work on my own stuff.
Right.
And when I get home, I'm usually into the business of Go Ask Erin. It's hard for me to get time to work on my own stuff. So I have a huge catalog, and I am in the business of making fake catalogs to demonstrate to people.
Right.
So while I'm doing this, I'm thinking in the back of my head, oh, this is bad. Oh, this is a mess. Oh, I should not be doing this. This is really bad. Hold on a second.
No worries.
So I have a big catalog. I have I have 5 years of amazing video that I have not been able to get together, to do anything meaningful with it all, except just put up straight clips.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like at least 2016 was a really good year for you, because you have some amazing photos just in your 2016 album on your Facebook page. I love the composite. I love the blue shape. What is it? You mean to tell me the moon wasn't that big?
That's a Peter Lick moon there.
Yeah.
And by the way, here's a little hint. When you have an image that has too much backscatter in it or whatever, and you just don't want to do it, turn it into a night image, and the backscatter becomes stars.
Exactly.
There you go.
Really good.
Awesome.
Nice. I like it. So how many dives do you have under your belt, Erin?
Probably, oh gosh, I stopped counting, but probably, I want to say like 3,000 or 4,000, probably something nice. Like that. When I do the math,
it's a fair few. That's awesome.
It's a chunk. I got a chunk of them.
Yeah, got a few. Right on. That's awesome.
Well, why don't we do the dive?
I'm this is the longest I've been out of the water in years. Since March. I went to Cuba on a coin flip. all this was just kind of happening, but people were saying, no, it's no big deal. I went to Cuba on a coin flip, and by the time I got off the boat, it was like, I was with Alex Mustard. By the time I got off the boat, it was like, you have 24 hours to leave the country. California's shut down. It was nuts. And, I barely, done anything since then. I certainly haven't been diving since then, but I am November 15th, I am going to roll the COVID dice, get on a plane, and go to the Maldives. And I'm going to stay there for a month.
That's awesome.
So I will be, look forward to some new imaging coming, my new camera, can't wait.
Now, was that more of a last minute trip that you threw together? Last minute being like
it's a casual trip. It's not really an advertised
right.
Trip.
Yeah. But I know Todd and I were headed to Africa, supposed to be in August, but that all got canceled because Kenya, was it Kenya that wasn't letting anyone in? Yeah, Kenya wasn't letting anyone in. And like a friend of ours had their Indonesia trip canceled for similar reasons. So that's the only reason I asked if it was something that you put together.
I've had 9 trips canceled.
Yeah.
And one of those trips was a back-to-back boot camp in Little Cayman at the end of November into the, first week of December. And I was waiting until last week, really, very recently. I was waiting to see if that was going to go. And then Cayman's like, nope, mid-January is the first time we're going to even entertain opening for tourism. So I was like, damn it. And I have a really good friend. She's actually my dive buddy, Martine Van Well. She's the general manager of this crazy resort in the Maldives called Six Senses, Lamu. They're like the next to last outer atoll, and it's the resort's its own island and all that stuff. And she's been trying to get me to come and stay there for a length of time for years. And I've just never been able to do that. I've been to the resort a few times, but I've never been able to go. It's not a dive resort per se. It's like a spa. They have a great dive operation, and the diving there is amazing. But people don't go there for a dive trip.
Right.
So Jen and Joel Penner and I are going to go there for a month, and we're going to do Go Ask Erin from Lamu. We haven't really been talking about that publicly, but that's what our plan is to broadcast Go Ask Erin from there. That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be there from the from November 15th to December 17th. And what I've been telling people is, if you want to come and hang out, we're there. It's not a formal trip. I will be doing little mini classes. And if you come, I will give you one-on-one help, as will Joel and Jen. But it's not structured like a workshop trip is. And it's just a magnificent place. Even if all you want to do is escape COVID and stare at the most beautiful scenery you've ever seen. There's 0 incidents of COVID on the island. Mm-hmm. And the way that you have to get there is so rigorous in terms of testing. So, to get on Emirates or Qatar Airlines, you have to be tested and quarantined before you can get on the plane. And then all their employees are tested every 48 hours, and besides which they're kind of in hazmat suits. And then, so, everybody on the plane is negative, and all the people on the plane are negative. The air is filtered anyway. And then when you get to the Maldives, you have to be tested to be let into the country. And then, but you don't have to quarantine if you have a negative test, which you should after that. And then when you get to the island, you have to be tested again, and there's no anything. And then going back, it's kind of the reverse. So I feel like, in order for my world to go on, for my life to go on in a recognizable way, I have to be responsible. I can't say to everybody else, oh, come on, do it, it's safe. That's not what I'm doing at all. But I have to, make my own decisions. And I feel like it's like as safe as could be humanly possible on that kind of a trip. So the thing I'm not looking forward is the 17-hour flight, LA to Doha, with a mask on.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll just find a really comfortable mask and
17 hours in the most comfortable mask.
I have a feeling that the intermittent glass of champagne with the mask down might help. Yeah.
Little bathroom break.
That's it. Yeah.
Plenty of skin cream to preventing that irritation on the
chapping.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like it'd be a fantastic time, though. So
for sure, can't wait to
You'll be seeing some
hear about it
images.
and see
Good
it.
luck. And they have really good internet there. So
Yeah, we were talking about Donald and I did a trip report episode a month or two ago on the Maldives, and one of the things we said was pleasantly surprising was how good the internet service is in the Maldives.
yeah, no, they have really good internet. Really, peppy broadband internet. It's good.
Yep.
Yeah,
and we had reception between islands for our cell phones pretty much everywhere we went. I mean,
pretty
very
much.
few times did we run out of cell range.
But the end result was, well, would you recommend people spend all that 17-hour flight to get to Doha and then another time and all the time and expense to actually go to the Maldives? And the answer was yes, and not necessarily for the diving, but just to get the resort experience was so worth it to have that.
Yeah, and we will. I mean, obviously, I'm going to dive. I'm dying to dive, but I realize that not everybody is, as manic as I am about it. And if really, you can do one dive a day there and not feel bad about it at all.
Right.
And their house reef, the boats I'm talking about, I get on a boat, I go out to the channels. It's drifting, it's challenging, it's currents, it's all that kind of stuff. But their house reef is amazing. Yeah. They've got crazy stuff on there. Last time I was there, I shot this some kind of snake eel that's unidentified. Out in the middle of the day, this beautiful, it looks like Dr. Seuss creature, with stripes and polka dots, black and white, and blue eyes. And it wasn't a sea snake, it was a snake eel. But they've also got, hairy shrimp, a lot of the things that you find in Indonesia and Lembeh are there. A giant population of turtles. Giant, like Ridley sea turtles and green turtle. I mean, I don't think I've seen that many turtles on a single dive anywhere. Every dive I would see half a dozen turtles minimum. Just great. And sharks, mantas, all kinds of sharks, mantas on almost every dive, tons of dolphin. It's just a really, it's a great little remote place to go.
Yeah, and just having that vibe of being on a secluded island, you have it all to yourself and a couple of friends is just...
Yes, and then, of course, there's the singing bowl massages. My favorites.
Yes.
Nice.
That sounds awesome. Sounds amazing.
All right. Well, we usually wrap up our interviews with the thing we call the dive brief.
Uh-oh.
Which is Todd, why don't you go ahead?
So it's 5 rapid fire questions. It's just whatever comes to your mind. We'll ask you a question, whatever pops right in the top of your mind.
Yes. No, wait. Oh no.
Yeah, exactly. Now you got it.
See, that's the answer for. You've already answered the first one.
Yeah, the first question
is what I scream something out and you ask me a question about it.
And we'll see what works. Well, let's see how that works.
We'll start right now. We got the perfect one.
Question number 1 is, what is your favorite dive snack?
My favorite dive snack. Oh, it would have to be the best local fruit. So,
nice.
If I'm in New Guinea, those little tiny bananas.
Right.
Mm-hmm. In Komodo, they have these great little, they're like mangoes, but they're not mangoes. I don't know what they're called. So the best local fruit would be my favorite.
Right on. That's awesome. So
and lemon heads.
Lemon heads. Good.
Nice. That'll definitely get the taste of the ocean out of your mouth for sure.
Exactly.
So other than your camera and housing, what's your favorite piece of dive gear?
Oh, my fins.
Nice. What kind of fins are you rocking?
I have some kind of long Plana Avanti quattros, they're called, power quattros. So they're in between a freediving fin and a regular scuba fin, and they're fantastic. I wear the full foot fins even in cold water because I feel like it gives my kick a better connection.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've kind of gotten used to these fins. I've got like 4 pair of them. They're great. And they come in a really cool Go Ask Erin camouflage green.
Nice.
Available on your shop link, I'm sure.
That's right.
Order them directly from Go Ask Erin and you might get some swag with it.
Oh my gosh, they're kind of hard to find. So yeah.
Nice.
If you could choose somewhere to dive that you haven't been, where would it be?
Interesting. Maybe Africa.
Okay.
You can head to Mozambique or...
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. And number 4, what is your favorite post-dive drink?
Oh, well, If it's available in quality, I would say any champagne, so bubbly wine. But otherwise, Mommy's Special Water is just vodka with frozen water.
Ooh,
Nice.
like it.
So that's
Mommy's
it.
Special Water.
Mommy's
I like
Special
it.
Water. Can't go wrong.
I like it.
What is
And
your
Todd, number
favorite
5.
sea animal?
Oh, easily cephalopod, octopus.
Nice.
Nice. The whole family, like we're talking cuttlefish.
Oh yeah, cuttlefish,
squid
pygmy,
and-
flamboyant cuttlefish.
Flamboyants,
I really
yeah.
believe that cephalopods, but octopus in general are aliens. They are here from a more advanced society. I'm almost positive.
Yes.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. We assume that you've watched. Was it Todd?
My octopus teacher. Yeah.
Octopus teacher. Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. Isn't that crazy?
What?
I have not had time to see. Somehow I saw Borat 2, but I didn't see my octopus teacher.
Very nice. Very nice.
Very nice. Very nice.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think I need my octopus teacher as a palate cleanser.
Yes. Yeah. It's an easy watch. It's only a little over an hour, but it was great. The footage that he has.
Oh no, I keep meaning to do it. I just ran out of time.
Awesome. Well,
right. No, you got one more question, Dalton. The last one.
One more question. We had a bonus round. Okay. So what's the most frustrating thing about diving?
The most frustrating thing for me about diving, I would say, is just the physical limitations that diving imposes. So, the possibility of getting bent if you stay in for 4 hours or, that kind of stuff, running, just the physical limitations, because I always seem to find the perfect subject near the end of a dive,
right.
And so that is really frustrating. And second thing for me is the amount of gear I have to travel with. Yeah. And since I travel by myself, I'm bringing 300 pounds of gear. Literally 300 pounds of gear, a backpack that weighs 40 pounds, a vest that weighs 38 pounds, a waist pack, fanny pack that weighs 9 pounds, and I think I'm about 3 inches shorter since I started diving, just from the traveling.
Yes.
Yeah. The traveling one is definitely a pain. And I think the first one, Todd and I are right there with you. We always say it's getting out.
It's getting out.
Having to get out. We're usually first one's in, last one's out.
Yeah, me too. I get in trouble for that all the time. But and I understand safety. I know, but I try to get away from other people on the dive.
Yeah.
I'm a really shitty buddy. I'm a terrible buddy. I admit it, And so that is very frustrating for me. The whole idea. I understand safety issues, don't get me wrong, but the idea that has to even exist makes me mad.
Yeah, that's one of the things Todd and I are grateful that we're 90% of the time we're each other's dive buddy, and so we're equally as shitty about it. So, because we're both off taking pictures. So
the person I mentioned, Martine Van Well, who runs the resort, she's a really good dive buddy because we have gotten into the habit of, if I'm taking stills, she'll take stills. If she's taking video, I'll take video. So we're on the same page, and we just keep each other's bubbles in sight.
Exactly right.
We're really respectful of how wide a wide angle is. For instance,
right.
You see yourself in somebody else's dome port. You got to either put your legs together and look pretty, or get the hell out.
Exactly.
But most people don't realize that.
Yeah. You're either a model or you need to get the heck out of the.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right, well, Erin, it's been great having you on, but before we say our goodbyes, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? I know there's Go Ask Erin, but do you have a personal site, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that fun stuff?
The thing is, I really don't. I do have, you can find me on Facebook, just Erin Quigley, you can find me. If you're ready for some more than just photography, that's okay, but I'm just warning you, that's what happens.
Facebook is for.
That's what Facebook is for. Yes. Proving someone wrong. All right. You know how well that works. So, but Go Ask Erin has a Facebook page. Just type in Go Ask Erin and you'll find it. Also, it's www.goaskerin.com. You can write to us questions that you would like us to answer at admin@goaskerin.com. Or if you have something that you want to set up with me personally, you can write to Erin at goaskerin.com. And you can also find me on Vimeo, although mostly what's on Vimeo are the tutorials. I don't have like my personal video clips up there because, as you told you, haven't been able to get it together.
Right.
So you can find me. I think if you just Google Go Ask Erin, you'll get a number of.
And do you have an online portfolio anywhere?
I don't. It's really just it's really just Facebook, and that's kind of it. I'm not really in the business of being a commercial photographer.
Okay.
You know, I use my own pictures to teach with, and I paint. I'm a painter, so I paint from them too sometimes. But no, I don't have a personal portfolio.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. It has been fantastic talking to you today.
Yeah,
thank
we
you guys so
appreciate
much,
all
and
your
thank
time.
you for giving me the grace after I was so crazy late. Thank you very much.
Don't worry about it. We're just we're excited to meet you in person, and hopefully we'll get to see you from the Maldives here shortly. But
definitely.
We can all get together since we're all SoCal divers anyway. So we'll get to go.
Oh, we got to do it. Yeah, we got to do a Channel Islands trip. That'd be fun.
That would be a blast.
Yeah, maybe go out to the oil rigs or something.
Oh yeah, oil rigs. That'd be great.
That would be awesome.
That'd be great. Fantastic.
All right, guys. Thanks
so much for your time.
Thanks so much.
Great to meet you.
Thank you. Great to meet you.
We'll be in touch. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.
All right,
Adios. Bye bye.